Hey everybody, happy Friday, happy Friday. Let me get Miss Dorothy in here. Hey Dorothy. Hey,
Hey,
how you doing?
here we are. I'm good. How are you? I
I'm
was
doing well.
for this stuff.
Right, so we're gonna wait probably about maybe 1 or 2 more minutes.
Okay.
Let folks start trickling in,
Okay.
and then we'll start off by introducing ourselves and all that stuff. I am
Mm.
so excited for today's session. I know we're gonna talk about some great stuff today.
Yeah, no, me too. I'm super excited, mainly because I'm always getting asked these questions about how do you protect your intellectual property through wills, through trusts, and so forth by my clients. So I'm hoping this can, I can learn something here and also be able to, also, I hope my clients join this platform so that they can hear how to protect them. So this is awesome.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I know I'm going to learn a lot from you. There's certain key, I think, buzzwords that folks hear: copyright, trademark, and things like that. And I'm not sure that we all know what it means.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is going to be a
Yeah.
great learning. So without further ado, thank you everybody for joining us. I am here with attorney Dorothy, and today we are going to talk about generational wealth and how you can foster the protection of generational wealth through IP, getting those assets protected with copyrights, trademarks, and patents. And so, Ms. Dorothy, could you introduce yourself?
Hey y'all, thank you for joining us on a Friday evening. I know everyone has plans for tonight, but we're going to make this really, really quick. I'm Dorothy Laguerre-Smith. I am a patent and trademark attorney. I do all things IP and I also do some IP contracts. Essentially, I worked at the United States Patent and Trademark Office for a while. That's where I basically started my career. And I decided to transition over to this side of things where I run a boutique law firm with a partner where we help people with protecting their intellectual property rights. So thanks for coming this evening.
Thank you for joining us, guys. My resume comparison to Miss Dorothy's, but I'm gonna go ahead and say who I am anyway. My name is Stevan Bush. I am the managing partner at the law office of Stevan J. Bush, Esquire, licensed to practice in D.C. and Maryland. I do legacy planning, which a lot of people also know as estate planning. And today we're going to talk about the intersection of sorts between IP and legacy planning. And so, first things first, Ms. Dorothy, what is intellectual property?
Yes, so great question. So intellectual property is basically the protection of patents, trademarks, copyrights, your name, your likeness, your publicity rights, all of that falls into intellectual property. Patents breaks down to inventions. If you have an idea and you can turn that idea into a product, that is your patents. Trademarks is more so the name of your business or the product that you sell. However you brand yourself to the public, that is your trademarks. Copyright is essentially like music, computer programs, audio visuals, architecture, and so forth. Anything that is like a form of expression. Your name and your likeness and your right to publicity, that says it all just by the name itself.
Absolutely. And so, thank you for that clarification because for me, and I know a lot of folks probably are in the same kind of position that I am, a lot of these words blur together, and we
Yeah.
know that it's something that you have to protect. And so, just to again draw that intersection between intellectual property and your regular assets, a lot of people don't understand that the law protects property however property is formed, right? And so intellectual property is your property, just like your house, just like your car, just like your bank account. It is your asset, and being your asset, it is definitely something that can create generational wealth for you, and it needs to be protected. And so my next question for you, Ms. Dorothy, is how do you go about protecting your intellectual property, your talent, your ideas, things like that?
Yeah, no, very good question. And you guys, like, this is my first live, so I'm kind of nervous. So if I'm super
Don't,
loud,
don't.
I usually hide behind the reels, where I can edit things. But anyway, so intellectual property, as you said, they are property rights. So what does that mean for the regular person? They're personal property, and a lot of intellectual property is actually considered similar to real estate. So with it being personal property and somewhat of real property, you can use it, you can sell it, you can license it, you can decide to abandon it. It's yours. You can do whatever you want to do with it. So that is why this conversation is so important, because you have this property. If something happens to you, God forbid, what happens to it? How do you pass it on to your children? How do you pass it on to how do you ensure that your family have rights to it after you're gone?
Absolutely. And so, can I ask you a question that I get a lot?
Yeah.
One of the questions that I get a lot is, if I get an LLC, is that the same thing as protecting my intellectual property? Am I protecting my intellectual property when I get an LLC?
No. Okay. So I think that's one part of your question I did not answer. So the way in which you protect your intellectual property is you file an application through the government. With patents, you file it at the United States Patent and Trademark Office. Of course, use an attorney. Don't do it yourself. Otherwise, you're wasting money, because these filing fees add up. With trademarks, you file an application at the United States Patent and Trademark Office. With copyrights, you file an application with the Copyright Office through copyright.gov. And so, your question about LLCs is totally separate. The whole point of an LLC is to separate you from the business, so that if someone were to sue the business, they cannot touch your personal assets. What are your personal assets? We're talking about your cars. We're talking about your house. We're talking about anything within your house, so that creditors cannot touch that. So no, they're different. They're separate.
Absolutely. And, I think from a historical point of view, right? Because I think if we're going to enlighten our community more about how to protect your IP, we need to talk about some of the things that I think we see as attorneys that folks are not really privy to, right? So, when you're talking about protecting your talent, when you're talking about protecting your ideas, there's some formal process that you have to go through. And if you don't go through it, right, just like anything else, that property is liable to be taken from you. We, as Black folks, as people of color, we come from a long line of inventors, a long line of talented musicians, a long line of artists. And it is no secret whatsoever that we are creators, but we do not reap, in a lot of cases, the
Right.
benefits of creations, right? And so, one person that comes to mind, who I think early on, right, took advantage of the patent process, one of my personal role models, right, George Washington Carver.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't invent the peanut, but he invented a million different uses of the peanut that
Mm-hmm.
helped to advance our society, right? And I think that when we're looking at how do we create generational wealth, we
Mm-hmm.
need to focus on protecting the wealth that we make, just naturally, just the way that we think, kind of thing, in a formal way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I mean, there's so many um, colored, you know, creators. And by color, I mean, brown skin, black, um, you know, Indian, anywhere with just some color. There's so many of us, but then we're of the minority, and we don't think about how do we create more than what we dream in the moment. I mean, for me, for example, my father he has a small Caribbean store, but his dream was just to create the Caribbean store just for the moment. But I think the problem is with with us, our culture is that we don't see further than that. We don't dream as big as the Walmarts. We don't dream as big as the Sam Clubs, the Sears, and so forth. But we can have that as well because we are creators. And you know, I love that you mentioned George Washington Carver. There's also Lonnie G. Johnson, the guy with the super soaker. Everyone loves, you know, about his invention, you know. And so,
Absolutely.
oh yeah, and all these things you can definitely pass down. And I think the next conversation is, how long do you have these intellectual property rights in order to be able to pass them down? So with patents, patents last 20 years.
Hmm.
Trademarks last for the lifetime of the business. As long as the business is still functioning, you can use a trademark, you still own the trademark. Copyrights, and again, copyrights, you're talking about music. And I think of Michael Jackson and how he was able to pass his, you know, the rights to his music to his children. That lasts for the life of the author plus 70 years. That's a long time. That's a long, long time. And I know a lot of that can be passed through a will and a trust. So my question for you is, how do you, while alive, how do you protect that? Through a will, through a trust, and which one do you suggest?
Absolutely. So there's a number of things that you said that, you know, I think we have to dissect just a little bit. So I know that you just talked about your dad. You know, even though he was dreaming in the moment, he ushered, you know, your progress along, and we have you, and you're doing amazing things, right? Uh, so that's one thing. You know, one example that I just love to talk about when we're talking about generational wealth, right? Let's think about Jeff Bezos, right? I literally, you know, always think about his story when I think about generational wealth. Now, Jeff Bezos, for those of you guys who don't know, I used to always think that, you know, guy that started from the bottom and, you know, had to dig up everything himself, and he was in his lonely Amazon office and all that kind of stuff. That's not the case. Jeff Bezos got, I think it was a $250,000 loan from his parents to start Amazon and to keep it, you know, going. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that shows you what the power of a generational wealth transfer can do. Amazon is literally the biggest corporation on the face of the earth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And did that with generational wealth, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
that just shows you the power of preserving your assets, preserving your talent, your ideas, right, for the next generation. And so the way that you do that for the next generation is, as you said, Miss Dorothy, you have to use wills, trust, power of attorneys in a very strategic manner, right? And so let me just talk about a trust, right? Because I believe that a trust is one of the most powerful vehicles that you can use in order to create generational wealth and foster it. And the reason why I say that is because a trust is like a contract. It's your blueprint for your family's progress. What do I
Mm-hmm.
mean by that? You appoint a trustee to look over everything that you own, and you leave instructions about what you want to happen with your property in
Mm-hmm.
that trust. And in many cases, you can be your own trustee, right? So just to kind of dial back and simplify that a little bit, let's say, for example, you have a copyright. If you own that copyright in your name, right, there are chances that, and you don't have any kind of legacy planning at all, there's a chance that the wrong family members will inherit your property, your next of kin, right? They'll inherit your property, and they'll do things that, you know, we often see in the media, right? For example, it broke my heart to see that Prince was one of the most anti-establishment people in the music game, right? He changed his name to the artist formerly known as Prince to protect, exactly, to protect his rights, his intellectual property rights, right? It hurt my soul to see that his family members, they inherited those rights from his estate, those same rights that he fought hard for, and they sold his catalog, right? And it's like, come on, come on, right? And so what a trust would do is that it would take the assets under your name in your estate, put it into a vehicle that is subject to your instructions, and it will distribute the proceeds and handle that property in ways that you can protect for your heirs and for your next of kin, so that you don't get into this whole mess of people just wanting to do a money grab.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And another question that I'm often asked by my clients. So I do a lot of patents, and with patents, at most points, you don't reveal your idea to anyone until you actually apply. But one
Absolutely.
that occurs is you're about to apply and boom, you pass away.
Mm-hmm.
In the realm of patents, your family members or whoever it is, what's the word that I'm looking for?
Your
What is the
heirs.
word? Bills, the person who inherits your property, they
Mm-hmm.
have a right to apply for that idea on your behalf.
Mm-hmm.
However, and paperwork have to be filed with the government and so forth. So how do you recommend? Will that be through a will in order to basically give the rights for a particular family member to file for that patent on your behalf? Is that best through a will?
So you can do it one of two ways. You can do it through a will, through your personal representative, or you can do it through your trustee. The trustee and the personal representative are, very similar kinds of positions of authority over an estate, but they're not the same, right? The difference being that your personal representative, if you don't have a will, your personal representative can do something silly and sell, the rights to things. However, if you do have a will and you leave that instruction for, that application process to happen, uh, it's definitely better than not having a will. But the personal representative can still do things uh, on your behalf, under your name, that you might not agree with. With your trust, if you put those rights under your trust, you can literally write that contract that I was talking about, and you can say, I want this to happen with my rights to, this idea, to that idea, and I want it to go to the proceeds to go to this person, to that person, for however long, the life of the patent lasts. And so I would recommend a trust more than a will, but definitely a will more than not having anything.
Anything at all. I love it. I love it. And I think another aspect of it is that, so in the realm of patents and trademarks, you can certainly assign rights to different people while still alive. And a lot of that's how a lot of patents and trademarks are actually transferred. It's through assignments.
Mm-hmm.
Heard that you actually have to file some kind of paperwork with the government once you have a will. So I think that's another area that people need to talk to their will, trust, and estate attorney about, is what paperwork to file with the government in order to ensure that you have a right to pay maintenance fees, because patents and trademarks both have maintenance fees. You have
Mm-hmm.
a the maintenance fees on the patent or the trademark. Otherwise, they're gone, they're abandoned. And that you have a right to actually prosecute the patent or the trademark. And by prosecute, I'm talking about being able to sue someone who violates these things and so forth. So I think it's funny how areas in law kind of just intertwine so beautifully.
Absolutely, absolutely. And to that point, again, the will is there to leave those instructions for your personal representative, to follow. But because of the very limited nature of a will, it's hard to spell out what somebody should do after they inherit some property. With the trust, all of those safeguards that you would like to put, and I had no idea of a lot of the things that you have to do to enforce a patent, to really solidify the rights to it. All of
Yeah.
that put into a trust, and those instructions to enforce, said intellectual property as well. So really, when you're talking about protecting your creativity, when you're talking about, you know, being able to pass on that wealth to your children, to, your loved ones, so that they can be, the next creators of Amazon, of, Tesla, things like this, you're talking about making sure that they solidify their property right, intellectual property, and then have a mechanism to protect that property through legacy planning.
Mm-hmm.
So Yeah, no, I definitely appreciated this discussion. It's Friday, and I know that a lot of folks have better things to do than just hear us talk about all this kind of stuff, legalese and whatnot. Um, Dorothy, if you had, did you have anything else that you wanted to contribute to the discussion?
Convo. This is such a good convo. And I just want to remind everyone that, like, although you may not think your business has any value now, but it might have value later. So that's why it's important in order to protect it now and to create that generational wealth, excuse me. Trademarks are worth millions.
Really?
Patents are worth millions. Copyrights are worth millions. And it's funny because I talk about my father. My father's business name is Dream Caribbean Supermarket, and I'm like, Dad, like I'm gonna, I had to force him to trademark the name because he's like, nobody wants it. I'm small business, nobody wants it. But in reality, it may be small now, but it won't be small forever. It can grow into the Amazons, it can grow into the Walmarts and so forth, and your child, whoever inherits your property can take it to that next level. So I think that's really the importance of just making sure you protect these rights through your wills, through your trust, so that your children can have that opportunity. You give them a good start at life, essentially, by doing that. And I think that's just what, we just need to be more focused on as Black people, as minorities, for sure.
Man, Attorney Dorothy, we need to have another conversation because what you just touched on, it reminds me of how do we protect ourselves from culture vultures, right? Folks that, because again, we are so like creative, we're so, things are just, mundane to us. But
Right.
to other people, it's like, oh, what you got there is gold. And a
Yeah.
lot attach themselves to what we have going on, and we have no idea the value of what we create, which is why it's so important to recognize what we're creating and go through those legal processes to make sure that our children can really fly with our creativity.
Uh,
So
well, thank
absolutely.
I got a hot date tonight, so thank you for
Go ahead.
having.
Great night, and thank you guys for joining us.
Bye, everyone. Good night.